What if the end is just another kind of beginning? The sound that comes just before death isn't total silence. It's a pause, a breath the universe seems to take before continuing. Time holds its breath, and something lingers. Picture this. Hospital room. The heart monitor flatlines. The machines fall quiet. But something remains. Something that can't be measured or shut down. Something that refuses to vanish. Maybe you've felt it. That suspended instant between the last breath and whatever comes next. It's not fear. It's not pain. It's something else. A presence without form. A knowing without language. As if your soul pressed up against the veil of this world and started to remember. If you're watching this, maybe something in you is stirring. Not a thought, a memory. This isn't a video, it's a signal for those who dare to remember. Over 70 years ago, medical journals began publishing reports they couldn't explain. People declared clinically dead, no heartbeat, no brain function, came back. But they didn't just survive. They came back changed. They came back with stories, clear memories, out-of-body experiences, visions, and most of all, a deep, unshakable sense that death wasn't the end. How do you remember something when the brain has shut down? What exactly keeps feeling when everything else stops? Science hesitates. Doctors observe but can't explain. Physicists theorize, but proofs remain elusive. Still, the stories keep coming. Patterns emerge, certainties break. Maybe the real question isn't what happens after death, but who's asking? You, or the part of you that never really began, and therefore can never truly. And quantum physics doesn't claim to explain the soul, but it keeps stumbling into mysteries that sound strangely familiar. Particles reacting as if aware, invisible fields holding all matter together, an order behind the chaos. What if modern physics is simply the latest language trying to name something ancient? What if every equation is a symbol? You're not here for answers. You're here because something in you recognizes the echo. You're not lost. You're remembering. In this film, we'll cross 5 thresholds, 5 symbolic mirrors, 5 ways of seeing death, not as the enemy of life, but as its reflection. But before we begin, just breathe. Feel the space between words. Maybe that's where the truth still whispers. And what if everything you've ever longed for lives inside a forgetting? If you could remember, who were you before fear? This is the beginning, or maybe the return. A lifeless body lies on a cold gurney. The monitor flatlines, no heartbeat, no brainwaves. According to science, death has occurred, but somewhere beyond the machines, something is still aware. She wasn't seeing with her eyes anymore, but she saw. She described things no one unconscious should know. She heard conversations long after her brain had stopped functioning. She felt a peace too vast to describe and a connection too deep to deny. This isn't fiction, it's a medical record, verified, replicated. Thousands of similar cases sit in hospital files and academic studies worldwide. They're called NDEs, near-death experiences, and they carry a paradox that science has yet to answer. How can there be vivid awareness when the brain is shut down? If consciousness is just a function of the brain, how does one remember anything after brain death? It's a question science often avoids because it doesn't fit, but some dare to listen. Dr. Pim van Lommel, a Dutch cardiologist, spent years documenting these cases. In 2001, he published a landmark study in the Lancet, a premier medical journal. Patients who had flatlined, clinically dead, came back with memories. Accurate, specific, impossible memories. One saw the tools used to resuscitate her from above her own body. Another described conversations in a room she'd never physically entered. Others told of light, of presences, of reviews of their entire lives. Instantly, vividly. How do you hallucinate? without brain activity. Neurosurgeon Eben Alexander had his own NDE while in a coma from meningitis. What he experienced shattered everything he thought he knew. He described it not as a dream, but as more real than waking life. What does this suggest? That consciousness might not come from the brain, but use it like a song uses a speaker. Break the speaker and the music stops playing, but the song, the signal, still exists. Maybe consciousness is like that, a signal, a field, an essence that borrows the body and continues beyond it. If so, death isn't an end, it's a transition. Those who come back from NDEs don't come back the same. They often lose their fear of death. They live differently. They know something now, something no one can take. Maybe you're here because something in you knows too. Not because someone told you, but because you felt it in dreams, in silence, in pain. You're not here for belief. You're here for recognition, for remembering what you've always known, in a place beyond forgetting. There's something in this universe that we can't see, but everything depends on it. Einstein sensed it, David Bohm described it. Today, some call it the unified field, a kind of quantum ocean where everything is interconnected, whether we realize it or not. Classical physics sees the world as made of separate objects, colliding and interacting like gears in a machine. But quantum physics tells a different story, of entanglement, of probability, of a deep underlying order that doesn't play by the rules of space or time. Bohm believed what we perceive as reality is only the surface. Behind it, he saw something he called the implicate order, a hidden layer of existence where everything is folded into everything else. Imagine the universe as a tapestry. We see the images on the surface, the stars, the bodies, the events, but flip the fabric and you'll see threads, tight, intricate, unseen, that weave all things together. That hidden side, Bohm believed, is where consciousness resides. To him, mind and matter weren't separate. They were two expressions of the same deeper field. Your thoughts, your memories, your essence. They didn't live inside your brain. They were part of the greater pattern. The implicate Einstein, too, spent his final years trying to prove this kind of unified field existed. He believed that the universe was not made of isolated pieces, but of one single continuous thing. No separations, no true boundaries. If that's true, then even your consciousness isn't contained in your head. It might be threaded into the very fabric of the cosmos. So when you think, when you feel, when you grieve or remember or dream, maybe you're not generating those experiences from inside you. Maybe you're tuning into something that was already there. Quantum entanglement shows us that two particles can remain connected even when separated by vast distances. Touch one, and the other responds instantly, as if the space between them simply doesn't exist. Could this be how our souls work? Are we connected, not metaphorically but literally, to people, places, dimensions we can't see? Is this why when someone dies we still feel them? Why we wake from dreams with messages we never asked for? Why grief sometimes feels like a presence? Maybe the field is always there, and we are never truly separate from anything or anyone. Maybe death isn't departure. Maybe it's dissolving into the field we never actually left. You're not outside of this. You are in the field. You are the field. Bohm once said, all the particles in the universe are part of an indivisible whole. There is no such thing as separation. What you see as your life, your memories, your identity, your story, is a surface, a momentary ripple. The deeper current is still flowing. And sometimes, in meditation, in grief, in wonder, we feel it, not as an idea, but as a pull, a whisper, remembrance. This isn't science versus spirit. This is the moment they meet, the moment they become one. We've been taught to see death as life's enemy, as if life and death were locked in an eternal struggle, one beginning, the other ending. But what if that's the greatest illusion of all? What if death isn't the opposite of life, but a curve in the spiral? In nature, nothing truly ends. A leaf falls and seems lost, but beneath it, new life is quietly being born. A fruit rots and vanishes, but inside, a seed waits in silence, preparing. Life doesn't run in straight lines. It pulses in cycles. Death isn't a wall. It's a doorway, not an absence, but a pause, just like the breath you're taking now. Inhale, pause, exhale. The pause is not a void. It's what gives rhythm. It's what allows the next movement to begin. Think of sleep. Every night you disappear, and yet, from that darkness, dreams arise. Healing happens. Memories reorder themselves. What if death is more like that? A return, a reset, a reunion. Quantum physics teaches us that the vacuum, the empty space between particles, is not empty at all. It's teeming with potential. It's where things are born. What looks like nothing is the source of everything. What if the same is true for death? Maybe it's not a blank void. Maybe it's the origin of consciousness itself, a place where time breaks down and the soul listens. Ancient traditions saw death this way. To the Egyptians, it was a voyage. To the Tibetans, a passage through dimensions. To the mystics, a sacred transformation. Only modern culture turned it into an erasure. And maybe that's why we fear it so much, because we forgot. We forgot that death is part of us, not against us, that the void isn't something to resist. It's something to feel, to enter with awareness. Because in that stillness, something awakens. Not the body, not the mind, but something deeper. In grief, we sometimes touch it. When everything breaks, something else appears. Not comfort, not certainty, but presence. A kind of sacred stillness that can't be named. In that stillness, we remember that we've been here before, that this isn't the end, that something in us knows how to cross. When you stop resisting death, when you look at it not as a thief but as a teacher, everything changes. Your fear becomes space. Your sorrow becomes listening. Your time becomes sacred. Maybe death isn't coming for you. Maybe it's always been beside you, waiting not to end you, but to remind you who you really are. Not the body, not the story, but the presence behind the presence. The silence between the notes, the matrix behind the form. What if you've touched this already? In the eyes of someone you lost, in the stillness of a sleepless night, in the second before a deep cry or a deeper truth, that part of you didn't vanish because it was never born. It just is. And when we find that part, even for a moment, our whole life shifts, not because we escape death, but because we finally understand it, not as the opposite of life, but as life's other face, a breath waiting to be remembered. Imagine two particles that were once close, now flung to opposite ends of the universe, and yet, when one moves, the other responds instantly. No signal, no delay, just connection. This is quantum entanglement. It's not a metaphor, it's physics, but maybe it's also a map of the soul. What if we too are entangled, not just with people, but with moments, dimensions, and versions of ourselves we've forgotten? Many who experience near death don't talk about tunnels or lights. They talk about connection, as if they touched something vast, as if the distance between I and everything vanished. One woman described it like this: my whole life unfolded before me, but not like a movie. It was all at once, and I could see how each choice I made rippled outward. She didn't know quantum theory, but she described its core: non-linearity, unity, interdependence. It's as if her soul wasn't just remembering, it was reconnecting. The soul, like entangled particles, seems to exist in multiple states at once, not here or there, but both. Not now or then, but all, and then. It leaps. Quantum leaps aren't gradual, they're sudden. One moment, an electron is in one orbit. The next, it jumps to another. No in-between, no path, just presence. Then, new presence. NDEs often feel like that. You were one person. Then, you weren't. You saw, you knew, you became. And when you return, everything feels different. You speak the same language, but the meanings have shifted. You walk through the same life, but with a new gravity. Something happened. Something leaped. This isn't fiction, it's the physics of awakening. When the soul leaps, it leaves behind more than fear. It leaves behind identity, not as loss, but as evolution. You felt these moments, haven't you? In dreams that linger, in emotions that don't belong to this lifetime, in déjà vu that feels like home. What if those aren't anomalies? What if they're echoes of you on the other side of the veil, calling you back, calling you forward? Maybe the soul is always dancing between layers, tasting each frequency, jumping, shifting, remembering, and maybe, just maybe, when we die, we don't end. We entangle. We become more available to the field, to others, to the all. Because even in this moment, you are already part of something vast, not in theory, in truth, quantum. Physics doesn't prove the soul, but it gives us a language to approach it, to feel its contours, to sense its symmetry. And in that symmetry, we see something beautiful. We are not falling apart. We are folding back in. Every leap is a return. Every return is a reminder that we were never alone, that we never truly left, that what we seek is seeking us. Right now, right here. Close your eyes for a moment. Feel your body, its weight, its breath, its heartbeat. Now, imagine it dissolving, not in pain, in release. And then ask yourself, what's left? If you remove the skin, the voice, the name, what remains? Many who've hovered at the edge of death say the same thing. They felt more alive outside the body than inside. Not numb, not lost, but expanded. They moved through walls, heard unspoken thoughts, saw from above and within at the same time. But it wasn't the visuals that changed them. It was the knowing, the sense that they were something vast, and always had been. They weren't dreaming, they were remembering. They realized that consciousness wasn't in the body was in it. What if that's true? What if this shell we wear is just that? A shell, a vehicle, a garment, useful, beautiful, temporary, and what's wearing it is the real you, not your story, not your form, but your awareness. Science hasn't mapped this part of us. It can't chart the soul on an MRI, but in every culture, across time, across geography, people return. From the edge of death with the same message, I was still me, even when I wasn't me. That voice inside you, the one you hear in silence, doesn't belong to your brain. It belongs to being itself, and when the body falls away, it continues, not as a ghost, not as a memory, as presence, timeless, vast, aware. Some call it the soul, others call it pure awareness. Some hear it as God, others simply as truth. The names don't matter, the vibration does. And if you're listening, really listening, you felt it, in a moment of stillness, in a depth of grief that broke you open, in a sudden clarity that didn't come from thought. That's you, the deeper you, the one that doesn't age or sleep or disappear. And that part doesn't need belief. It simply is. Integrating that knowing into life is the sacred challenge, not escaping the world, but seeing through it, seeing others as reflections, seeing suffering as part of the dance, seeing death as a doorway. You've touched this before, in music, in nature, in love that doesn't make sense, in tears that don't need reasons. That's the soul remembering. That's the awareness that doesn't end, because it never began. It simply shifted. Tones, from form to field, from sound to silence, from name to presence. And when you live from that space, life becomes more than survival. It becomes sacred because you know now. What dies is not who you are, and what remains was always you. Return to the beginning, that moment when the sound stopped, the monitor fell silent. Everything ceased, except you. Do you remember? Maybe not with your mind, but with something older, deeper, quieter, something that knew before you were born, something that still knows. You've walked through memories that weren't yours, but recognized you. You've heard science speak in the language of mystery. You've seen death not as a rupture, but a return. And maybe, somewhere along the way, something shifted in you, not an idea, a vibration, not information, but resonance. Because none of this was theory, it was reflection, and the mirror was you. The paradox of NDE's. Bohm's hidden order, the illusion of separation, the quantum soul, the knowing that you are more than this body. They're not concepts, they're invitations to remember, to feel, to recognize. And perhaps the most sacred invitation of all is silence. Not silence as absence, but silence as memory. Silence as presence. Silence as the original language of the soul. What if everything you've ever longed for lives inside a forgetting? Not forgetting as loss, but as veil. What if forgetting was the way in, and remembering the way home? You're not the same as when you began this journey, because something in you has come back, not to who you were, but to who you are. Because consciousness never ends. It only changes tone. It only softens. It only returns, like music that still echoes, even when the instruments fall silent. You are that music, not the note, but the hum beneath it. And death? Maybe death is simply the moment you hear the entire melody, all at once, without noise, without interruption. But for now, while you still breathe this life, remember, you are not lost. You are remembering. And if something inside you has stirred, if something quiet has awakened, then maybe this isn't an explanation. Maybe it's a sign, because those who see must recognize each other. So now a question remains. If you could remember, who were you before fear? If something in you already knows, leave a sign, not a comment, not a like. Leave a pause, a dot, a silence, so others will know they are not alone.